Hey guys, it's Tom Box, and welcome to MST.TV. I have a very special guest with us here today. This is a gentleman that I got to meet in person when you brought up Gren Maju in YCS and took second place. If you guys don't know who he is, welcome Yishan McNabb.
Thank you, Tom Box. Yes, I'm Yishan. How's everyone doing?
If you're playing Gren Maju in today's age and you don't know why you're playing it, it's probably because of this guy. You're an inspiration, honestly.
That's one of my. It felt so good, I think, because when you play a deck that people don't really play, it's sort of your deck for like a little bit, right? For like that moment. But as soon as I topped, it really wasn't my deck anymore. It became part of the community,
Yeah.
And so that made me pretty happy.
Yes. 100% though. I watched your games happen. It was really exciting. But now you're known to be like one of the biggest inspirations for Rogue players right now. And you were at YCS Portland 2019, and that's where you got your second place. Unfortunately, you lost to Sky Striker. That was technically your worst matchup though, wasn't it?
It was, and I got lucky. I mean, I played Garon in top 4, I only played 2 Sky Strikers that day, and it was top 4 in the finals, and I got very lucky in top 4.
Yeah.
And then Brian Chen, who's a very, very good player, he sauced me real quick in the finals and put an end to my dreams. But
I think
it was still a great YCS.
At that event, though, I think everyone wanted your profile more than anyone else. And you single-handedly raised the price of Golden Castle to like $40 over the last couple minutes.
Yeah, I have a funny story. My friend called me. He's like, "Hey, are you gonna top?" And I was like, "I don't know." And he's like, "All right, I'm gonna go buy some golden castles real quick." So we had some insider trading going on there. But he made some $30 or something. I don't know.
This is Yishan McNabb, guys. Make sure you guys check out his channel down in the description. And if you guys want Rogue inspiration, you're teaching people how to get better at Yu-Gi-Oh! Not just like via the meta sense, but you're also teaching people how to get better in terms of like the Rogue sense. What do we need to do to actually compete with all these crazy decks? In fact, that's what we're doing here today. We're going to be breaking down how to get good as a Rogue player. And we're going to go in a format where we'll talk about this format. We'll break it down for you guys, and we'll talk about the options and how to approach these colossal, I guess, meta decks that everyone seems to be playing.
Ooh, the scary meta.
I know, the scary meta, right? So, first of all, what would you consider as the top meta decks of the format?
Okay, well, I'm pretty sure everyone agrees Drytron is probably the best. If it's not the best, then Virtual World is the other top deck.
Yeah.
And then you get a bunch of Eldritch variants, but Zoo Eldritch is probably the most popular.
Yeah.
And then we have basically all your Dogmatica Invoke, Dogmatica Invoke Shadol, Dogmatica whatever. Yeah, the control variants. And in terms of like high meta, that's basically the things you need to be wary of.
Of all of these decks, I think the main culprits comes down to 5 pillars in this particular format. These quote-unquote pillars. They are the monster that you see and you dread, and you go on Twitter and you start crying about it. Well, these cards should be banned.
VFD should have been banned. Let's put it. I'm just gonna put that out there.
VFD probably will get banned. I'm saying that now. Double VFD is not fun to play against. Right now for Drytrons, you're likely going to see Vanity's Ruler. We've got VFD. We've got Herald of Ultimateness, and the other 2 are kind of more interesting, much more aggressive. We have Dragoon. A lot of the Eldritch decks, let's face it, they're dropping Dragoon like no tomorrow. They're playing Red Eyes Inside to dig the card out and then set 4 pass. Then there's the other one, which is the Board Breaker. This one I think people would say is more fair. People don't really complain about this card, but it is part of the meta. It is AA Zeus, Sky Thunder. So these are the 5 pillars, and each of them, well, they have a different function on each one. One is suppression through negation, which is Herald, and Dragoon is just ending the game short. And you can't target. It's hard to kill. It's a very sticky boss monster, and you have to work around to kill him. Vanity's Ruler doesn't let you play. VFD doesn't let you play. And AA Zeus punishes people for
trying to play.
So these are the things that we're looking at right now. So how do we actually approach these as, say, a Rogue player?
Okay, yeah. So as a Rogue player, well, the first thing you've got to understand is it's almost always the case that there's not a clean answer to all of these cards, or some deck doesn't have a clean answer to all of these cards. Because if you did have a clean answer to all of these cards, then your deck probably wouldn't be rogue anymore. It'd probably be meta, right?
That's true.
So I mean, it's very likely that you don't have a clean answer to all of these cards.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So then the first thing you need to ask yourself is, depending on the deck you're going to play, is which card is the worst for me.
Okay.
Right. Which card is the worst? Some decks, maybe they don't care about a Dragoon at all. They're like, I'm playing Grand Mage. I got 6 Kaijus in my deck. I'm just going to Kaiju that. I'm going to go on with my day. But, you're going to be very worried about Vanity's Ruler or something like that.
Yeah.
If you're playing a rogue deck like, I know Tombox, you're a fan of Madolches, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times, I feel like you're worried with that deck, and I'm not a Madolche expert, but I would imagine that Zeus out of those ones probably scares you quite a bit. Because there's the Madolches get a lot of pluses, but they sometimes have a hard time dealing with Zeus. So that would scare you. So you maybe as a Madolche player, you're like, okay, well, maybe I need to find some ways that I can deal with a card like Zeus. That's the kind of question you have to ask yourself. Well, okay, maybe, I'm not too worried about the other things, but Zeus really scares me because there's very little my current version of the deck can do about it. So that's the first thing you really need to ask yourself. The second thing you need to ask yourself is, can I actually do anything about this? And sometimes, unfortunately, the answer is no. Or if you try to do something about it, it really hurts, the rest of your deck, for example. Yeah, like, if you're playing Grand Magi and you jam your deck full of, hand traps to stop VFD and Vanity's Ruler from hitting the field, the truth is, and, people don't like to admit this, but if you're going to a relatively large event, you're gonna see some random decks there, right? Your decks may not be powerful enough to beat other rogue decks because you're too focused on the meta. So sometimes you just like, what, I can't deal with it, and that's okay. I think you have to be sort of honest with yourself, or you can pick a new rogue deck. But I do find a lot of rogue players tend to be like one-trick ponies. They're like, oh, I love this deck, so I'm gonna play. I don't care if it's bad in the meta. I'm gonna play it anyway. So there are two options. Can I do something about it? And then if I can, is it even worth it? And sometimes it's okay to say, what, actually I can't do anything about it, but I'm just gonna accept it. Like I'll be okay. I'll just hope to not play against it, and that's also sometimes fine.
Okay, that makes sense. But a lot of it comes down to this deck building. Like, how do you build your deck? And you mentioned before, if I cram it too many hand traps, maybe it hinders my playstyle. Maybe it hinders the win con of your deck. So that's kind of the balance I kind of want to get into. Let's talk specifically about the 5 cards we have. Right now, let's put into the context of Grand Maju. What is the most struggling aspect of Grand Maju in this current format?
Well, it's definitely the first category with the Vanity's Ruler and the BFD. And I'm sure there are a lot of other decks that feel the same way. So if you're not going to, in my opinion, if I'm looking at it from my perspective, I'd still play a lot of Kaijus and then try to play a plan for Virtual World game 2. And here's why is okay. So this is this actually illustrates all 3 examples of what I was just talking about. The first thing is, honestly, I can't do anything about Vanity's Ruler. I'm just going to accept that Vanity's Ruler is just going to beat the crap out of me, basically, right? Okay. However, if they're playing an Ultimateness version, which is gaining in popularity, then my Kaiju is pretty good against that, right? So I have an answer that's pretty good against Ultimateness, right?
Yep.
I mean, Kaiju, boom, that's the best you can ask for. And then VFD, if you're dueling your opponent, a lot of times they hold the VFD till the main phase because they're waiting for you to put a card on the field so that it doesn't get gammaed, right? And so even the Kaiju sometimes might be effective against VFD. So I look at it from a Grandmaster perspective. I'm adding Kaijus to my deck, which are great against a bunch of other decks. You play against Dragoon. Oh, Kaijus are good there. It's not a perfect answer, but it's pretty good. And there's no perfect answer again, but this is a very decent answer. It's going to help you in a lot of situations. And it also doesn't hurt your deck. I get to play Kaiju Slumber. I get to bring some level 8s onto my field. That works with my deck. I'm not diluting my deck to a point where it sucks against everything else. I'm actually still able to play the game, still able to execute my game plan.
Okay. I know a lot of people that are playing rogue decks. They have this ideal build, quote unquote ideal build, where they're it has to run these monsters. I can't shift them out. But one thing to consider is what we're looking at here is like, how does it actually handle the big problems of the format?
Yes, I actually, that's a great point. People love certain cards, like even me, right? Like, I mean, like, you know, like I've always played this card in Grand Majo. I can't cut it now, right?
Yeah.
And it's really hard for I think humans to let go of something they like, even though I think like deep down they know, you know, like, okay, I really need to let go of this card. Like, for example, like Eater of Millions. Eater of Millions is probably just not the greatest card for Grand Majo and going second this format. You know, it doesn't beat VFD. It doesn't do anything to Vanity's Ruler. It gets popped by everything, right? It gets popped by, you know, any Zoo Eldritch deck, right? So you're like, okay, maybe I have to let that card go. You know, like it really hurts because it's, you know, it's been, to use your word, a pillar of Grand Majo for so long. And you're like, okay, well, maybe this format he's gonna have to take a break. And, you know, you have to ask yourself, you know, why are you playing Rogue? I mean, and that's a fine answer. If you're playing this deck because you like to play those cards, then it's fine. But I think there's a very large percentage of Rogue players, they want to play something cool, but they also want to win.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they also want to win.
That is that fine line that you want to balance, right?
Right. But you want to win it a cool way, right? Or maybe you just don't want to pay like a bunch of money. But, you know, a lot of it is because like you want to win in a cool way. That's what it is for me, at least. Like, I think it's cool. Like, Grand Majo is probably never ever going to be the best deck in the format, but it's cool.
It's very cool.
Right? So it's like, it's fun to play. And, you know, so I think, but you can be okay with parting with some things. You sometimes have to be okay with parting with some of your favorites for a format or two.
For me, when it comes to like parting with cards, I think about it as like an evolution of the deck. I've actually, like, if it makes you guys feel any better about parting with your cards, here's how you do it. You go on any sort of Yu-Gi-Oh! Simulator. You actually archive every version of the deck you have. So you can always go back to it and kind of reminisce about the good old days. It's easier that way, all right? Yeah. Or else you're not going to be willing to change.
No, it's true. It's true. It's hard. It's hard to change. And I think that's one problem that Rogue players have. You know, they like playing Rogue because a lot of times if you play Rogue, people like have no clue how your deck works, so people won't tell you to change because they have no idea, right? You have to be honest with yourself, I think, first.
Yeah, it's true. Like most, I would say most Yu-Gi tubers, we mainly focus on the meta. I'm not gonna lie, I focus on the meta all the time, and I'm talking about how to use hand traps versus like all the meta decks. You don't see me make a video about, oh, these are the hand traps you need to do to tackle against Grand Majo to beat Ancient Warriors. You don't see that, and therefore most people actually do not know what you do. In fact, one of the biggest benefits about playing Rogue is that people don't know what to do against you.
Absolutely. And I actually think to continue on your point is that not only do it's better because they don't know what your cards do, it's even better when you're live dueling, like you're playing like a remote duel with real cards, because on Dueling Book it's super easy for your opponents to, they can see everything. They read like the exact card text. They can read it like 50 times if they want to. They can Google interactions, like how does this work, XX, X, Y, and Z. But no, that's a big advantage. You know, playing a Rogue deck is your opponent's going to misplay against you every once in a while. So
for sure. And I have an example of that. I remember in one of the YCS Seattle, back in when Zodiac was still alive, I remember that my friend, I think he played against Billy Brigg, but he played with Psyframes. Of all decks, he's playing Psyframes, and basically the deck is just full of gammas and whatnot, and then everything is just getting blown up to pieces. It's hard for someone that doesn't adapt to that deck, and it's like the most hand trap of all hand trap decks.
Yes.
And he did manage to take the win off of that one, so that was like,
you beat Billy. Wow, that's impressive.
I was like, well, then it's like you use a Rogue deck, but then again, one of the biggest issues I would say for like Rogue players, especially for people that play in teams, is that not a lot of people want to practice with you. It's hard to get practice partners. That is a very true thing. I think I know this for a fact because the person that's playing meta won't feel like they're getting anything out of it because the practice, like, let's be real here. Rogue players are such a small fraction of the tournament, I guess the tournament turnout. Like in comparison to people playing meta, you can say about 75% of your chances are likely going to hit within the meta 3, but then everything else is like, it could be anything. You might not even hit that. Even if you play against a Rogue deck, it might not even be that Rogue deck that you practice against. So that has come up quite a bit when it comes to like, oh, what do you think about a teammate playing Rogue? So what is your take? What is your take on that? Like, how do you get practice?
How do you get practice? That's a good question. Yeah, well, I think it depends on your play group, and I do think it's really great to play against experienced meta players with your rogue deck, because you have to understand how the meta decks work as well if you want to do well. And in playing against a good meta deck player, you'll understand, okay, how does this deck work and what can I do to beat it, and that'll help. But I agree, a lot of times the players are less reciprocative, I guess. They don't, like, okay, well, like, what are the chances I face Gren Maju tomorrow? And like, like it's very low, right? And so the real way to do this is to just go on Dueling Book and play in the rated match ladder.
Don't give them that choice.
Yeah, because they have to play. That if they don't want to play you, they're gonna lose their rating points. Right?
Oh, internet points! Oh my god.
Yeah, exactly. People don't want to lose their rating points, right? So that's the best way. Or you find one of those friends that's just like, you find one of those deck hopper friends, okay? And like everyone's got a friend. I've got a friend. He knows who I'm talking about.
Shout out to you right now.
Yeah, shout out to Bailey, okay? And the kind of friend that's like, every time they see a new deck, like, they want to play it, right? They want to play it. And so you can test all your rogue decks against this guy, because you'll play your friend, he'll see your deck like, oh, I'm gonna want to play it, and then, okay, so he'll be excited to play it, because then he'll start asking you a bunch of questions, and you'll have to teach him how to play the rogue deck. There are some players that they're just very curious. They just love to learn all these new decks, and that's actually a really good experience, because you get someone else's perspective on the deck, and you try to teach. And there's like a saying where, like, the best way to learn something is to teach it to somebody else. Oh, yeah. So not only do you get that sort of thing, but you also get their perspective. And like, oh, have you tried this card? Have you tried that card? Or like, I think you should play more of this, more of that. And so that's not really like improving your gameplay, but that's going to improve your deck. When I took Grandmaster to Weiss's Portland, it's funny, actually, my friend, this friend that I'm talking about, he actually played the deck first, because I was testing it with him. And that, like, in his personality, like, oh, I got to play this deck. Like, you just played it. He actually bought the deck before me and played it at a local before I even had the chance to play it. But he gave me a lot of suggestions, and the truth is, when I went to Portland, that deck wasn't even a very optimized version. It had probably some suboptimal choices, and it's not until someone else has played my deck and given me feedback. A lot of feedback I dismiss. I'm like, okay, that's just, like, I don't think that'll work very well. But a lot of feedback, I'm like, hey, actually, you know what? That you might be right about that. And so I think that's a great way to improve, because in the end, it's all about trying to maximize your winning potential. And their practice comes in many different forms. That's one great way to practice, is to get someone else and teach them your deck, and have them question you.
Okay.
So yeah.
What are some options you would use against things in the meta?
Okay. I think the first thing I always look for when I'm looking to improve my rogue deck chances, just card wise, is I'm looking for free wins, basically.
Okay.
I'm looking for a card that if I have it against some of these meta decks, I'm just gonna win instantaneously. One example of this is like, I'm not even saying you'll play these in your rogue decks, but like, if I normal summon Falsadina and set some traps, I'm probably gonna beat the crap out of Dry. I'm probably gonna, if I, like that, right? You're looking for free wins, and so that's the first thing I look for. Like, okay, in a back row heavy deck, can I consider Lightning Storm or evenly matched? And so like, that's the first thing I look for is free wins, like Floodgates. Oh, was TC Boo good? Is Summon Limit good? Where are the free wins located? Because that's the easiest way. Like, listen, like, you got like, your deck special summons. Okay, I'm gonna flip over this Floodgate, and I just won. Like,
you can do anything.
I made the game unfair, basically, which is which I think is
the point.
That's the point, because that's what the meta decks. I mean, there's summoning Vanity's Ruler on the first turn, for God's sake. It's the same thing, right? It's just
they drop a ruler, I drop a Mystic Mind. What do you want me to do?
What do you want? So you're looking for the free wins, and they're like, there's many different free or very powerful plays. Like, one thing I'm thinking right now is like the Trap Shadol rogue deck. I think it's relatively popular recently. Like, Sinister Shadow Games isn't a free win per se, but there's a lot of times where it feels like you're playing against that deck and they resolve Sinister Shadow Games and the game feels like it's basically over, right? Like, so you really want to, you want to identify those cards. You want to identify those cards, because That's where your power lies. That's where your power really is. Like Grand Maju, Draglubian's a great example. That's where the free wins. I'm going to summon something with 9,000 attack, basically,
and just punch you in the face.
A Neuromon Dragon, right? So I'm looking for free wins. So that's how I look for cards first before anything fancy. Before anything like, this card counters this specific interaction or whatever. I'm looking for the free wins, the floodgates, the trap card.
Simplify the game state to the point where it's just your number versus my number, and I'm gonna put the number that's gonna do 8,000.
Right, exactly. Let's play a different game. Let's try to play a different game. I want to play. It
makes sense. That's I think one of the biggest things about playing Rogue is changing the tempo. Changing it so that it's not, because if you follow the flow of the tempo, you won't be able to keep up. I mean, you play against Outlet, they're gonna cycle resources to no tomorrow, and you're gonna be losing everything.
Exactly. You have to understand. You have to understand your role. Can I grind with this person? No. Okay, well then let's not play cards that are good for grinding. I'm not interested in being good in grinding. I'm gonna get outgrinded by everybody. Let's play cards that stop them completely, or just kill them now, or prevent them from playing. Right? You have to pick your battles.
Sometimes it's actually worth it to actually explore the other avenues. And if you want to go into the rogue decks, it's even more so, because things aren't as defined. You're not restricted by, I gotta play by so-and-so's list because he did so well at the previous event. It's not as applicable when it comes to rogue. I think you are your own creator at that point.
Yeah, it's your deck. It's your deck. That's how I like to tell people, like, should I do this? Should I do this? I'm like, well, I think you should do this. And they're like, well, I disagree. I'm like, well, it's your deck at the end of the day, and you get to make the choices. But what you're trying to do is you're actually, for this video to be relevant, a year from now, if you're watching a year from now, you want to train your brain to look for these things, right? Yeah. It's like, if you're a rogue player, you want to train your brain. Okay, where are the free wins? Oh, is this a free win? Is that a free win? Is this card, maybe I can pick this card for surprising my opponents. If you train your brain, you're going to get better at this. You're going to get better at evaluating cards, like, oh, okay, that might actually work, or oh, that's not going to work at all, sort of thing. So
there's a lot I think there's a lot more to consider when it comes to like the rogue strategy, because I think getting the rogue tempo going is a lot harder than following the flow of what's going on so far. Like, what do you think to that?
Yeah, I think rogue decks are not going to be as strong, so it can be harder to get going. And I think, one thing I would say is that that's actually a good strategy to just look at what cards meta decks are playing as well, for inspiration for your own. Like, for example, Torrential Needle Sing, they're playing a lot of meta decks. They probably work in your deck too, depending on your deck, of course. Or like, sometimes, I know people don't want to hear this, but like, sometimes an Adir Servant is just perfect for your deck. Like, it's like, some meta decks are playing, like, I should probably play it too. And it's like, that way you can sort of, like you're saying, is like, rogue decks have some trouble keeping up with the tempo sometimes of the meta decks. But if I just take some parts of the meta decks too, like, I'm gonna use an Adir Servant, and boom, now I can keep up a lot easier with these meta decks. Or it just goes back to understanding your roles. Like, I'm never gonna be able to outgrind this guy, so I can't get into a grind game.
What are some of the rogue decks that you would consider playing in this format right now?
Okay, yeah. So if you're the kind of rogue player that just wants to play something rogue and doesn't really care too much, like you don't have a pet deck, and I play other things besides Grand Maju, try to keep myself fresh. not just always playing OTK. Banging your head on the table, sort of thing. I think one deck you might be familiar with, this deck, Tom Box, is the Lyrilusk Tri-Brigade deck.
Yes.
So it meets my criteria for a pretty good rogue deck. And the reason for that is, right now, I think it's slightly better to pick a rogue deck that goes first. It's just easier. It just makes your life easier. I can play traps. Like, some of the Shaddoll decks trying to play traps. Like, that's going to work pretty well against almost every meta deck, right? Or I'm going to play going first. Lyrilusk Tri-Brigade, I guess, for those of you guys that don't know, it's like a combo. I would sort of call it a little bit mid-range, but it's combo first, mid-range second sort of deck, where basically It's trying to summon out, and the Lyrilists work very well at doing this. They can go like Appaloosa, Samorg, and they can use the Samorg link to summon out a barrier statue and protect the barrier statue with a link.
I know what you're bringing up now.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, exactly.
that was painful, man.
One of my friends, played against Tombox actually at the remote duel, which it's funny. I just sleeved up this deck. I have it right here actually. The Lyrillist.
Oh man, deck. that is actually on my list here. Lyrillist Tri-Brigade is one that I found very fascinating.
It's a very fascinating deck
because you have so many like level 1 options that works for that deck. You can actually play Jack in the Box because like your opponent won't want any of your cards. It won't work for them. But then you don't care about which one you get because you'll be like, oh, this one's gonna special summon that one. That one's gonna search a card out of the deck, and I'm gonna get the other one I want anyway. So like it doesn't really matter. And then yes, building up that barrier statue.
Right.
That was like you said, the free win button.
The free win. That's the free win that you're looking for. It applies to that
because although the barrier statue doesn't work as effectively against Virtual World, because Virtual World, they are wind and earth based, so they will be able to punch through that card, and they can put more than enough bodies to clear it out. Like you said before, it doesn't cover all grounds.
Right. However, at least it's still okay against Virtual World. I won't say it's good, but at least it has chances. It's got the Appaloosa, which is very, very good against Virtual World. If they don't have Qinglong. And so, like, you have to... It's pretty solid, I would say. And it goes first, and you can play a decent amount of hand traps in it to be okay going second.
Yeah.
And so I found it's a very good deck. Also, there's another big advantage. You get a huge advantage because people don't really understand how your deck works. It's hard to hand trap. It has many different ways they can play around hand traps. People don't understand how it works, which is pretty important.
I think the part that people overlook a lot of the times is that as that graveyard starts to load up, they don't realize how threatening a single Tri-Brigade monster can become.
Tri-Brigade's like, it's gonna go like +3 one Tri-Brigade when your graveyard is full. It's kind of crazy.
It is so crazy. And these are the strategies that really just aren't out there because no one will talk about them.
It's actually very cheap, by the way, too. So any rogue players looking to play that deck, I would, I have a video on my channel of actually my friend Kyle who played against Tombox. And so this is how I got started on this deck because I lost to Lyrillist Tri-Brigade at the Invitational as well.
Hey.
So we both lost. I mean, like, it's crazy, right? So like, I'm like, and the thing is, a lot of people when they see this deck, they think you're trolling them, basically. Like, that's what I thought. I'm like, this guy. I'm like, well, because I played this guy, I was like 3-0 or 2-0-1 or something. I was like, man, how did this? Like, he's playing Lyrilisk. How can this deck be good, right? So I thought I sort of was a little bit like, this deck must be like, he must have just gotten lucky. But then when you see their end board, you're like,
that's pretty good.
This is not that's pretty good. At all. They are not. This deck is serious. Like, it's gonna I'm like, holy crap! Like, I'm gonna lose. Like, I can't do anything about this.
And then the side deck becomes even harder because you don't even know what they run.
Right, they don't know what you run,
and they know how to counter against you.
Right, exactly. Like, okay, so actually, this is a little bit side topic, but as a rogue deck, you need to understand, okay, how is my opponent gonna play against my rogue deck? How are they gonna beat me? And so, like, okay, well, what's one problem for this deck? It loses pretty hard to droplets. This is just an example, right? If my opponent's got droplets in the side, it's coming in. How am I know that's coming. How can I stop it, right? Well, you ask yourself, oh, okay, well, if I know that's coming, that's one of my biggest weaknesses. I'm just gonna play 3 Judgments and an Imperial Order in the side deck. And that'll be my answer to droplet. I think, didn't this happen? Did you
that is exactly what happened to me.
This is thinking ahead is, okay, I have my free win. How do I make sure that it's like, how can I protect it, right? So like, it's just one thing you think about, okay, how are they going to try to counter me? All right, I'll bring this in to counter them.
I tried a Dark Ruler and then it got countered.
Chain Imperial Order or something.
And then I couldn't combo because my combo got stunned because that thing is still alive. And I'm like, I can't summon out my Drytron.
Right, so you're like, okay, as the rogue player, you have to. If you're playing against someone decent, someone that's very good at the game, they're, good players are usually they're quick to adapt. Like, they might not understand your deck very well the first game, but they'll see the end board, they'll be like, okay, I can't let this statue get out again.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so I'm gonna bring in cards to counter the statue. Well, like, you're gonna have to understand. Like, okay, I know he's gonna counter the statue. Here, I'm gonna bring in cards to protect my statue. It's really trying to understand what's important, and can I protect this resource that's keeping me in the game, basically.
For sure.
I guess one thing I would mention is also you want to have the right mentality going.
Yeah.
The right mentality. So I have always believed that if you want to do well at an event, you have to convince yourself that you're going to play every round no matter what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it just helps you because you're gonna lose some games, and like a lot of people will drop. Oh, I can't get top 16, I'm gonna drop, or I can't get this, I'm gonna drop.
X2 drop,
right?
X2 drop, yeah.
X2 drop. Like I'm not. If I can't get top 8, I'm gonna drop. Which is some people do this. They don't even have their invite yet at like a regional. I'm like, why are you dropping? Like just play. And maybe if you have to go, you have some other commitment. I understand, but most people they're just kind of like, oh, I don't want to play anymore. Like it's like, oh, I have 7 rounds left, and if I don't win all of them, like I can't do this or I can't do that. It's like, just play, because that gets you in that mindset, which is like, this round I'm just gonna go into the game. I'm just gonna play the best that I can, and I'm gonna move on. If I lose, it doesn't matter. I'm still gonna play the next round. And so I think that's the right mentality, and you want to get yourself into that mentality because that also helps you give up less. A lot of times you will just like mentally give up when you're playing a rogue deck, and I'm kind of guilty of this too. I find that actually I play worse when I'm behind, and I play better when I'm ahead. And I'm trying to work on playing better from behind. And I think the most important thing is just to stay calm, because I've won plenty of games I thought I would have lost playing a rogue deck because my opponent just does something strange to end their combo. Like if for some reason, if you just sit there confidently, then you sometimes get your opponent to do strange stuff. Like all of a sudden, like you sit there confidently, like, well, maybe this guy's Nibiru or something.
Oh, it's playing around Nibiru that doesn't exist.
Just play around random stuff. Like I actually like, I'm trying to get better at this, playing from bad situations, because I'm not the best at it. I tend to play better when I'm ahead because I'm like, okay, I'm really good at trying to stop my opponent from coming back. But when I'm behind, I sort of get down. I'm just like, oh, this game is so like, why is VFD legal? Like, I'm like, this sucks, or whatever, right? That's
time to go on Twitter. Time to go on Twitter.
I'm going to go on Twitter. I'm going to go make a post about it, whatever. But, like, I've been trying to get better at this. So like one example I've done is I was playing Grand Maju. I still lost this match, but I was proud of how I played it, which was the guy made double VFD on me, right?
Okay.
And I didn't have an out. But what I did was I acted extremely I didn't have an out in my hand, but I acted extremely like, oh, I can't beat double VFD no matter what. Now I'm playing Grand Maju, right? So I'm just like, oh, double VFD. Like I made like a point to seem like I was really afraid of double. Like I can't beat double VFD no matter what, right? Mm-hmm. And I was citing Super Poly for that event, so I just put in 3 Super Polys, right? And I opened the Super Poly, and my opponent, he did because I was so distraught about the double VFD game 1. I was like, oh, I can't beat double VFD. I got him to use basically all his resources again to make double VFD. And then in the standby or draw phase, just Super Poly, suck up 2 VFDs for a Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. And like, people are kind of like, oh, that's like, there's 2 options. You can try to like be, like depressed, or not really depressed, but down, like, okay, I can't do anything. But I find that for some reason, if you just like, okay, you try to calm down, you try to go and be like, okay, how can I win? What can I do? Not only do you play better, your opponents also play worse. Because if they start to question, like, why is this guy not like, sometimes I can tell when my opponent is like sad. I mean, sometimes they're bluffing me, which, hey, all credit to them. Like sometimes I'm trying to figure it out if they're bluffing me, but most of the time, like against 80% of the players, I assume that their body language is really reflective of what is going on in their head or in their hand, truly. So
I think we're gonna close it out right here. Hopefully you guys are inspired. I am very much inspired. You're definitely inspired me to go and pick up more rogue decks. I'm actually gonna go and try ABCs again, because I'm very curious to see how that deck runs nowadays. And
that's pretty good. I've played it recently too.
Have you? Oh wow. Yeah,
actually, I think Pot of Disparity, I think it's called, will be pretty good in that deck.
Being able to just
find that Union Hanger. Find that Union Hanger, basically, because Union Hanger is worth about like 4 cards. I think Union Hanger is a 1-card Buster Infinity, so that the Union Hanger is worth like +5, basically.
It is.
Union Hanger is better than any other card in your deck, so yeah.
You want that card to go off, but yes. Well, that's all I got for this video, guys. This is, of course, Yishan McNabb. Thank you for joining in. Any shoutouts you want to give?
I guess a shout out to Yu-Gi-Oh Club at UCI. That's where I went to college. And you know what? Shout out to the Austin Duel Association too. I spent a summer in Austin, Texas, and made some good friends there.
Okay.
Shout out to my YouTube channel. That's basically
check it out down in the description. I if I were to recommend one segment on your channel, it is, I think it is the one how to get better. And the one thing that you said is be a judge.
Be a judge. Yes.
Yes.
I think yes. Learn the rules. Actually, I've won. I can't even count how many games I've won because I knew the rules.
That is my recommended video for you guys to go check out on his channel. I'll leave a link in the description too. So yeah, I do watch your stuff, not just.
I see Tom. I see Tom commenting. I'm like, wow, Tom watching my stuff. Like,
yes.
I feel good. I feel
no,
good.
I go around, but yes, this video. Thank you so much for joining me. And well, if you guys want to watch more stuff, if you guys enjoyed this video, smash that thumbs up button. If you guys want to see more stuff from